Well, after a long run, we'll finally be saying goodbye to The Walking Dead. Can you believe the show's already approaching its end? It only seems like yesterday we were watching the first season, but now we're here waiting for the show's finale. In light of that, it's probably the best time to talk about some details a few of you might have missed. Without further ado, let's begin. First up, the first walker from the series is still alive. Alright, the very first thing we want to focus on is how the first walker from the series is alive and kicking. The one thing that all fans appreciate about The Walking Dead is that it's unlike all those other zombie shows out there. It offered an incredibly refreshing perspective by treating its walkers like humans. The deaths, undeaths, and second deaths of the show's zombies bear a huge impact on the characters, and it adds more nuance to the series when they delve into all those complicated emotions. In the pilot episode, we saw that Rick Grimes met his first walker. This one happened to be a very cute little girl clutching her teddy bear. That small detail really humanized her character. Back in that episode, they merely called her the Little Girl Walker. But flash forward some 8 seasons, and guess what the creators of the show did? They cast the actress who played that first walker in the pilot episode to play another walker. Not just that, they also made sure she bore a resemblance to the little girl we saw in the season's pilot episode. What made this particular reference so brilliant was that it hinted that walkers age just like humans. Now for Dale's little speech in season 1. In the episode Vatos of season 1, Dale's accompanying a survivor group, and they find out that Dale still wears a watch. Of course, they're intrigued and ask sweet old Dale what's the use of keeping track of time in this apocalyptic world. In response, Dale ends up quoting a passage from the book The Sound and the Fury. The passage talked about how time is the mausoleum of all hope and desire, and the reason why time bears so much importance for Dale in connection to that paragraph is because, as he goes on to quote,
"Not that you may remember time, but that you may forget it for a moment, now and then, and not spend all of your breath trying to conquer it."
Yeah, we know that got a bit too sophisticated and philosophical for a show about zombies, but the metaphor holds a lot of significance in how people should not let themselves be controlled by their regrets, and rather, it's better to humbly accept your current situation. And then, season 5 ended with episodes that were titled Remember, Forget, Spend, Try and Conquer. And if you remember Dale's speech, you would understand the significance of it in connection with the show's theme. Up next, that cameo of some pretty famous zombies. Oh, this is a pretty fun one. We all know that The Walking Dead is littered with multiple references to many other shows, and half of the time, most fans miss them because, well, you've really got to pay attention to notice these. There have been appearances by certain celebrities, and it's okay if you didn't catch them because they have all played walkers. And well, it definitely would have been hard to recognize them with all that graphic makeup. Okay, so we remember that Chris Hardwick appeared as a walker in an episode in season 9. Then there was legendary Anthrax guitarist Scott Ian. What's more, they even cast Greg Nicotero, the executive producer and director of the show, as a walker in an episode. Seeing him rip out a piece of flesh from Agatha's arm was pretty gruesome. Not to mention the thing with the clocks in the episodes. Now the show's notorious for attention to detail, and we'll be really surprised if you didn't know about this one. It's a classic, and honestly, kudos to Greg Nicotero for coming up with this. A pretty ingenious move. Pay attention to the time whenever you spot a clock in any of the show's episodes, because according to Nicotero, they would just adjust the time on all those devices so that it corresponded to the episode they were shooting. What makes it all the more amazing is how the show has a huge focus on time, and uses that as one of its central thematic devices. Before this, we talked about the passage Dale quoted, which also placed a big importance on time. So yeah, this one detail really drives it home. Coming up, that one time they paid homage to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. One thing fans really adore about the show is how it's full of these tiny details to other franchises. For now, we'll be focusing on that one time they paid homage to our favorite Turtle Ninja Warriors. In season 6, there's an episode where we come across a character called Eastman. Now, this might not bear much importance for some of you, but die-hard Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fans remember that one of the co-creators of the comic book series is Kevin Eastman. That surely can't be a coincidence. But it's not just about the name. We see this character called Eastman teach Morgan Aikido, and and he's even wearing a shirt with a picture of a turtle. Do we need to say more? It's more than obvious the episode was a nod to TMNT. Moving on, the brilliant allusions to Little Red Riding Hood. We talked about the clock thing, and now we're going to mention another detail that's definitely going to blow your mind. One of the main villains in the series is a group called the Wolves. They don't appear until season 6, but the show's writers spent a great deal of time foreshadowing their arrival in season 5. And boy, they didn't hold back on letting us know just how savage these wolves were. In one episode of season 5, Daryl and Aaron came across a man who's wearing a bright red poncho and a hood. We don't need to tell you that the same man was later on brutally murdered by the wolves. And if you remember a particular children's story, then you recognize the symbolism of that scene. Now for some truly remarkable details in the show's 100th episode. Every lengthy show's 100th episode just happens to be very important. That holds true for The Walking Dead as well. They featured plenty of props in the 100th episode, and while this was the same episode where we saw the little girl Walker from the show's pilot episode make a return, we also saw Joe Giles make a comeback. The man returned as a flesh eater in this episode. Before that, he played a walker in the pilot. What's more, the cinematography of this episode was just too good. They repeated some shots as a nod to previous episodes, which was simply brilliant. Following up, the references to the Evil Dead movies. There's no denying that Nicotero went all in with these symbolic references and brilliant Easter eggs. He definitely didn't hold himself back. That's especially true for how he made sure season 9 of the series was full of tiny details about the Evil Dead films. The franchise also happens to be Nicotero's favorite, so it makes a lot of sense why he chose it particularly. In one episode, when Rick has successfully escaped from a bunch of zombies, he takes refuge inside a very odd-looking cabin. The cabin was full of references to the Evil Dead, and it couldn't have been more obvious. The cabin's a clear reference to the one that appeared in the 1981 and 1987 installments of the movies. On top of that, there's a mounted deer head, and we all know what that points at. Moving on, the possibility of Rick returning. We were all sad to see Rick leave the show for good in season 9. He was one of the main characters in the show, and it truly doesn't feel the same without him. After spending such a long time with one character, it makes sense for fans to get attached. In light of that, a lot of fans have tried to come up with theories about Rick's return to the show. The biggest hint so far has been when Michonne finds Rick's boots near a shipwreck. Fans have held on to that scene with the hope that maybe Rick would be brought back. Last but not least, The Walking Dead advertising. You should consider yourself really lucky if you watched the season finale live. The reason was they presented a series of commercials during the finale, and the one thing that was common to all these ads were they all featured former actors who had played various roles in the series and were in the form of walkers. They titled this entire series of ads as The Walking Dead advertising. Honestly, that's a pretty catchy name for it. We won't spoil the ads for you because it's better if you see them for yourselves. That's a wrap for this video. Are there any details from the show that we might have missed? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.